Hi, I'm Alex Howard, and welcome to this video. So we thought it would be nice to get to know some of the trainers behind the Conscious Psychology Practitioner Training Program. So I'm here with Anna Duschinsky. Hi, Anna. And Anna, I know obviously that you first got into psychology because you had ME chronic fatigue, and that was a big catalyst, as it were, for your own journey.
Absolutely.
I don't know if you want to say anything about, I mean, even with ME chronic fatigue, the idea there's a psychology component often is, how was that for you?
Well, this was, I mean, I'm ancient now, so this was about, what, 15
You just feel
years
ancient.
ago. Yeah, that's true. So there really was very little around about the idea of there being psychology as part of the issue with chronic fatigue or ME. There's more of that in the mainstream now, even though it's still extremely controversial for a lot of people. So at the time, it hadn't even crossed my mind. I was an 18-year-old who was completely clueless as to emotions, that the brain had any impact. I mean, even the idea that, you know, that your thoughts had an impact on how you functioned or how you felt. None of that, not even crossed my mind, I don't think. So it was absolutely revolutionary. I think what happened was, so I kind of crashed completely at university. I'd come back to my parents' house. And my dad was a consultant in kind of the business world. My mum was a teacher. So they both happened to have a couple of books on NLP. And I picked this up and went, that looks interesting. And started reading. And it was mind-blowing. Literally one of those absolute moments of just a revelation that there perhaps was some link between my psychology, the way I was thinking, my emotions, and actually how I was feeling physically, and that there could be a connection. What I think that did for me most was begin to really spark my curiosity, but also give me the idea that possibly I had some kind of role to play in my own recovery. Because as you'll full well know, and a lot of people out there, there's a very disempowering feeling that just something has happened to you and to your body, and that you have no control over that at all.
Yeah,
so that was the bit for me, I think.
Yeah, the fact that you can actually learn different strategies, different ways of being with yourself and the world that can actually change real physical symptoms.
Exactly. And I think that was a little bit down the line. You know, the first book was kind of, you know, thoughts, what they are, and how they can be conscious,
you have thoughts
unconscious,
and you have feelings,
emotions. But, you know, I think particularly going forwards, and those of you who are kind of, you know, out there and maybe interested in NLP, the work of Robert Dilts, for example, he did a lot of work on health and NLP. So reading some work around that and then going, oh my goodness, actually, it, as you say, it could directly impact how I'm feeling physically.
Yes.
And therefore, can I begin to look at shifting this? And that was, a true moment of revelation, and really started me on a completely different path.
And just briefly, what was that like in terms of this whole new path opens up? And I imagine all your friends at university had a somewhat different view of the world, let's say. And you were kind of this new kind of passion and appetite for this new way of thinking and feeling. Yeah,
I mean, it was this weird combination, as you'll understand, of really, really trying to work it out for myself. So it was quite challenging at points, to be honest. And I think a little isolating, definitely. Luckily, my parents were vaguely interested in this. Not maybe to the extent, and I'm not sure that they quite got where I was going with it. But I think they, you know, they had a concept of this. So that was quite useful. But most kind of school and uni friends, well, one of them famously said to me, oh, it's really interesting what you're kind of exploring, Anna. She was very open to these things. She said, but I wouldn't want to have to go through what you're going through to figure it out. And I thought, yeah, it's fairly valid. But apart from that, a lot of them were going into, you know, kind of the commercial world and jobs and becoming lawyers or whatever else. And this was, it was really weird. Definitely considered a kind of hippie weirdo for quite a while, which, you know, I got comfortable with it.
Then you got a real job down the line.
And then I actually got a job from it, which I think amazed everybody. Yeah, absolutely.
So maybe saying a little bit about when you started doing your own training, when you were a student on a training course. How was that to kind of go from kind of reading books and applying it to actually learning how to work with these tools? Well,
I was really, as you say, really hungry for it. I did my level best to get myself on the first training that I could find. And it was an astounding experience. I think partly because I was still poorly, I was still ill, really. Not as bad as I had been, because I was able to, you know, do a course, but I was definitely still not 100%, really tired, lots of symptoms. And I think it was a kind of two-phased experience. One of them was just the amount of learning And it's a whole different way of learning. It's, you know, I'd been in kind of academia for 18, 19 years by this point. I was fairly used to kind of training my brain in that way. But this, like, my brain was tired after day one, you know, because it's such a different way of thinking and learning, and you really have to kind of throw out a lot of what you maybe had assumed. So there was all of that, plus during it, I was having my own experience of trying to apply it to myself physically.
It wasn't just a set of ideas, a lived experience.
Which I think maybe ultimately has become part of why I've kind of taken it on so much as part of, you know, my own self and mindset, that I was really living it, as you say, during those courses. But yeah, absolutely fascinating from a kind of intellectual perspective, challenging and fascinating from a physical and emotional perspective. Yeah, a real whole new world. I remember just constantly thinking, why has no one told me this before?
Yeah.
How have I not figured this out? Or how is that not what you learn at school? It's just such obvious stuff once you know it, that this is how your brain works. Even ideas as simple as the fact that, you know, we have like a screen of our mind, and we have images that we run inside of our minds, and that can impact the way that we feel. No one had ever told me that. I didn't know that. I'd never figured that out. So it was a real, just every bit of it was a real learning experience. And actually some of it as well, really feeling like, oh yeah, of course. You know, that it's so kind of common sense once you hear it. Yes. It's almost like you always knew it as well. So that too.
And then actually having practical tools to work with that. So it's like, you know, oh my God, like I make images, they make me feel a certain way, and actually these are the ways I can change how I do that.
Exactly. I can actually shift this. I can shift, you know, if I make a big image of a massive black spider this close to my face, I'm probably going to feel quite a lot of fear. And yet, if I shift that, move it away, change it, and these are really, you know, just the simplest kind of NLP tools and techniques, then I'll start to feel different. And then, of course, you can apply that and apply that and apply that in all sorts of different ways to how I was feeling.
And then, of course, you've completed your training, and in time you ended up starting. I know you had an award for almost going through the most number of training courses.
I did pretty much. Yeah, I think partly what I did is, as soon as I was well enough to work at all, I started working for an organisation that brought NLP trainers over, which was my cunning plan, to see as many NLP trainings as humanly possible. So that was great fun.
Yeah,
really good.
And then you started working with your own clients, and in time, of course, you started working fairly early on in your practice life, the Optimal Health Clinic.
Yeah.
What was it like going from being the client to being the practitioner? How did you experience that transition?
It was a very natural one, in the sense that my own personal experience of it, as quite a lot of the guys on the training course now, you start to work kind of doing practice sessions and pro bono sessions, you know, working with people that you know, or friends of friends, or whatever it was. So it was a very natural experience to start with, in that people around me got interested in, I suppose, partly just the fact that I had really significantly speeded my own recovery through understanding a lot of this material. That said, it would have been a lot faster if I hadn't had to figure it all out myself at the time, as you know. But so partly it was people going, oh, I'm really interested. You know, you seem to be really using this stuff, and it seems to have made a difference, which we're seeing. Yes. My friend is having issues with X, Y, and Z. Could you chat to them? So there was a very natural progression, I suppose, of that. And I remember, you know, the first person said, well, you know, do you think you can help me with this? And I went, well, I really don't know, but I can try.
Let's find out.
Exactly. You know, obviously I wasn't charging for that process. So, and that was a really fast learning experience, because a lot of people kind of came my way over a very short period of time, I suppose. So it's a fascinating process. I think, you know, part of, which we'll talk about shortly maybe, but part of what I love to teach people is not just how to understand the techniques and the principles, but then actually how to become a good therapist. One thing that I think was true in a lot of the trainings that I did, not to name names at all, but was that there wasn't really any teaching as to how you did that. Yeah,
it was teaching of theories and ideas rather than the real clinical application.
Exactly. So you knew the process, but suddenly you've got a person in front of you and you're trying to figure it out. So that was a real learning curve for me over the course of like a year and a half of going, okay, hang on. And then obviously with the Optimal Health Clinic, again, which was a great opportunity because, you know, there were people to kind of work with and really use this with. And again, that was, a real learning curve of understanding how human beings work, not just how I worked or how the intellectual idea of this stuff worked, but actually, how you clinically apply it.
Yeah. And of course, I remember when we first started working together. I think it's actually 10 years ago.
It's crazy.
It's a long time. But I'm curious as to, how it's been over those kind of years, in a sense. How, seeing, and as I know you have, literally working with literally hundreds and hundreds of people that have been in the situation that you were in, and being the person to be the therapist, the guide, the mentor, the inspiration, whatever you want to call it, to help guide those people.
Well, yeah, I mean, as you say, I think we figured it out at some point. It's kind of over 10,000 hours of client work, isn't it? It's mad. It never ceases to be an honour, to be honest, because I think having been through it, there's nothing more kind of rewarding in some ways than being able to impart some of those tools. Obviously, it's challenging. Everyone's different. And that's kind of one of your learnings, I think, early on as a practitioner of anything, that because you can apply it to yourself in a certain way, actually, every human being has a different way of functioning and being. So that's been endlessly interesting and fascinating, but endlessly rewarding, and I've always felt like it's a real honour to do it. And it's something that really needs to happen and people really need. So it's been a wonderful process which has begun with obviously something that for me was quite traumatic at 18.
Sure.
So it's lovely to turn it around in that way, for sure.
And then maybe just say a little bit about teaching on the training program, which again has been for a number of years you've been doing that. But what do you love about doing that?
It's one of my favourite things to do. I think because you get that moment that we remember as little participants on the first course that we went on, of going, oh, this stuff is mind-blowing. And I think seeing people experience that is wonderful. I love some of the technicality of it. I suppose there's two disparate bits that I love about it. One is just the technical aspect. As you know, I study languages, so the idea of understanding language from this perspective and understanding the impact it has, I find really interesting, and I love being able to teach and impart that bit. I also love the emotional piece, because that was a big bit of my own journey. And that real understanding of how to get in touch with your own emotions and the impact that has, and the fact that you can shift and clear, or at least come into contact and be able to sit with your own emotions, is really powerful as well. And that is always wonderful to teach. I also love teaching, as we were just saying, that kind of really how to apply the clinical piece. Probably because that's something that I had to learn for myself over the years. And I think it's really important for people to have that. So that's my favourite bit.
Final question: what excites you about the future of the field? It's kind of it's now whatever it is, 16, 17 years that you've kind of been studying and then kind of practicing and then teaching. Where would you like to see all these ideas move in the future?
It's really interesting. I mean, we have talked over the time a lot about this. I think one thing that I'd like to see more of is, of course, NLP becoming more of a recognised clinical piece, because people can see it very much as outside of that field. Whereas I think, if you look at what NLP is, it was originally the study of excellence in therapy. So, how it can't fit into that doesn't make any sense to me. So I think the research side of that is really important, and kind of really making sure that the training courses live up to the kind of clinical level of psychotherapy training, I think is really important. From the other side of it, what's really fascinating teaching kind of year by year is, of course, because we're working with lots of people daily, we're always evolving what we're doing and really interested in different practices. I think you're talking later about EFT. And so all of these things that kind of we're bringing in. And what's interesting teaching, I think, is people going, oh, okay, so originally you'd have done it this way like 30 years ago from an NLP perspective. And now actually what you're saying is clinically there's maybe a more efficient, more effective or elegant way of doing it. So I think that evolution is endlessly interesting. And I hope that people doing the course can go on to take that and run with it themselves. That's really, I think, our aim with it, isn't it?
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah. Anna, thank you so much. Okay. Thank you. And thank you for watching. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of a taste of not only Anna's background, but also some of the evolution of these ideas. So thank you for watching, and hopefully we'll talk with you again soon. Bye-bye.